With so much data and personal information being gathered in the digital world, the role of privacy has never been more important. Chris Busby from MCS Group is joined by Dr. Jonathan Sinclair from High Roads, Rochelle Reid from Allstate NI and John Woods from Insurance Office of America to look at why Insurtech companies need to take privacy seriously and what measures are Insurtech companies taking to protect their customers.
Good afternoon, everyone, and you're very welcome along to today's panel discussion on behalf of Digital DNA, centering on why do Insurtech companies need to take privacy seriously. As we all know, the Insurtech industry, both globally and in NI, is thriving, and I'm delighted to be joined by three expert panelists today to field a number of questions and share their insights. I think perhaps best to start with introductions from the panel. If the guys would be keen to give a brief synopsis of bio, their career to date, and the current organisations they work within. Rochelle, can I start over with you?
Yep. Hi, I'm Rochelle Reid. I'm a Business Information Security Officer at Allstate Northern Ireland. So I'm the security leader for our Compute Services Department, acting as the trusted advisor to both the business and also the Chief Information Security Officer. I'm responsible for establishing and driving a security strategy and program for my area of the business, and I partner with business and technology executives to increase security awareness and strengthen the security posture across the Allstate enterprise. Locally, I'm chair of our hugely successful Women in Technology group, whose mission is to develop, advance and retain our female talent. The Allstate Corporation is an American-based insurance company with its headquarters in Chicago, Illinois. So Allstate is the nation's largest publicly held personal insurer and a Fortune 500 company. It offers a broad array of protection products through multiple brands and diverse distribution channels, including home, auto, life and other insurance. So Allstate Northern Ireland was established in 1998 to provide high-quality software development services and business solutions in support of the parent company. We have over 2,300 employees across 3 sites in Belfast, Derry and Strabane, and are a major centre for innovative software development, as well as having a large cybersecurity department based locally.
Brilliant, thank you. John?
Thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is John Woods. I'm the Vice President for Enterprise Systems at Insurance Office of America. We are also in the insurance space, similar to Rochelle and Allstate, albeit not quite as large. We are a family-owned insurance agency founded in 1988, operating also in the US insurance market in both the personal lines and commercial lines markets. We are one of the fastest growing independent insurance agencies in the US, headquartered out of Orlando, Florida, with over 65 locations throughout the US, in Belfast and in London also, and over 1,500 employees now. We opened our office in Belfast at the beginning of 2019 as our technology hub. We now have almost 40 professionals locally and continuing to grow in areas including data analytics, digital marketing, IT infrastructure and operations, software development, and of course, cybersecurity as well. Prior to IOA, I worked for EY, consulting on cybersecurity and data privacy. And before that, I spent some time as the head of information security for Liberty Mutual here in Ireland as well. I've been with IOA for just over 2 years now, joining just after the office opened in Belfast. So excited to be here today, and thanks, Chris, for the invite onto the panel.
Brilliant, thanks, John. And last but no means least, Jonathan.
Hi, Chris, and afternoon, everyone. I'm Johnny Sinclair, and I'm VP of Engineering Site Lead at High Roads. High Roads are Boston, US-based health insurance data management platform, and we set up in 2019 also, and our primary engineering site is based out of Belfast. I've represented database engineering teams, not just in both high roads, but in social media and cybersecurity sectors as well. And I come from also an angle of doing my PhD in auditing of compliance in the health insurance sector and data privacy in the cloud and virtualization spaces.
Fantastic. Thanks, Johnny. So guys, the first question I would put to all three of you centers around data security. And what I'm keen to understand is how much, in your opinion, and why ultimately, is data integrity and consumer data security such a priority for the insurtech industry?
Well, I think insurance companies have a wealth of sensitive customer data, which make them a prime target for attackers. So if you think about it, your insurance company knows where you live, the type of house it is, the number of people in the house, the car you drive, your occupation, aspects about your health, and the list goes on. So it's therefore essential that consumers can trust their insurance company to protect that data and ensure it's used only for the purposes for which it was intended. Allstate's motto is "you're in good hands." So as a company, we really must live into that and ensure that each individual knows that their identity and data are in good hands and that we're doing everything we can to protect it. Aside from consumer trust, which is essential to the success of any business, the growing regulatory and compliance aspect is also driving insurance companies and financial institutions to ensure that the protection and integrity of consumer data is of the utmost priority. The financial implications of a breach can be significant from both a brand, reputation, and sales aspect, but also the financial implications of regulatory fines can be substantial. So the California Consumer Privacy Act enforces penalties of $2,500 for each violation, or $7,500 for intentional violation after a 30-day opportunity to resolve. Locally, GDPR allows the EU data protection authorities to issue fines of up to 20 million euros or 4% of annual global turnover, whichever is higher. So you can see why companies really do need to take security extremely seriously.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I would totally agree with that, Chris. I think Rochelle mentions a word that also for me is very key, and that's trust. We know that inherently there is a lot of information and data used in the insurance and financial services industry for the purposes of doing business, and there is an expected level of trust between consumers and their providers to take care of that information and protect it accordingly. We know as well that prioritization and investment in security and privacy has been increasing year on year, and the expectations are that will also continue, not just in the insurtech sector, but across financial services as a whole. And cyber risk and privacy is one of the top concerns for all organizations. If it's not, it absolutely should be. The insurance market's extremely competitive. So again, going back to that trust component, even through opportunities that have been presented in the recent years with things like digital marketing and the advancement of digital services, we know that acquiring new customers is much more expensive than retaining existing customers. So by maintaining that trust, and I suppose keeping customers loyal is something that is critical to long-term success and long-term partnership for insurance organizations. So if that trust is broken, either through misuse of data or poorly handled incidents or issues, customers won't think twice about moving their business elsewhere. And with it being such a competitive marketplace, they have many options to do that.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be no surprise that I'm not going to disagree with any of the two previous comments. I think to add to what's been said, I think we have to reflect on the end users, the consumers of the world, and how the world has changed for them technology-wise. Today, people understand the value in their data. and people want transparency. They want to have that trust not only in the insurers, but trust in the everyday use of their data and understanding where their data is and how their data is being used, where it's being stored. And people are also much aware of that due to other technology changes such as social media and shopping practice and how loyalty is used. So that has transpired into every sector, whether it's financial or now insurance, that they understand the value of their data and how the capturing of their data can be misused easily. They're also very cautious what data they share, and understand that there's only so much data that is required for certain instances of information, what we say, benefit. So we have to be very understanding of the end user and the world we're in now, because there's so much misuse, as we've mentioned. And so much ability for data, to be abused and lost. That insurance companies, like every other company, are being looked upon to be ambassadors of data integrity and security in the data practice.
Brilliant. Thanks, Johnny. Again, guys, this is to all three. But in your opinion, what measures are insurtech companies or the industry as a whole taken to protect their customers?
Well, in Allstate, we've taken a number of measures to protect customers. So we've adopted a privacy by design, privacy first approach. So we ask whether an individual's personal information truly needs to be used or stored as part of the solution. And we embed privacy into any project plan where PI is expected to be used or stored. And we try not to ask for personal information that isn't approved as part of the standard business process. And just being transparent about privacy standards and how PI is collected, used, and disclosed. And then from a cybersecurity perspective, which is more where my role fits in, we've implemented a strategic protection program to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of our most critical application systems and platforms. So this program enhances security in areas such as access controls, by implementing multi-factor authentication or faulting of privileged accounts, re-verification of access, and network segmentation. We've also enhanced our detection and response capabilities, so that our security operations centre can get ahead of any attacks, and then protecting our valuable assets. So understanding, where the crown jewel data is, where it flows, and making sure it's encrypted in transit and at rest, and that really only that those people that need to get access to it do so. We've also built out secure coding pipelines so that developers don't need to think about security. It's already built into the automated pipelines. Code gets scanned for vulnerabilities and is prevented from going to production unless those have been remediated. And then supplier security has become a greater focus over the past year. So ensuring that the suppliers we're working with are taking security as seriously as we do, and that they have appropriate security controls in place to protect customer data. So we're regularly carrying out third-party risk assessments. And then education and training. Security, as we know, is everybody's responsibility, and the human element is the greatest risk. So we need to make sure all of our employees, all of our agents have security awareness training. And part of my role is to educate the folks in my department on things such as phishing or the dangers of downloads or social engineering. But it's not only employees that we're educating. So we have also launched a hugely successful cyber safety program for the broader community, more recently targeting older adults who maybe just aren't all as cyber savvy as some of the younger generation, to enable them to stay safe when they're online, especially as more of them have had to turn to the internet during COVID times. And then we've also created a new privacy product called Digital Footprint that helps customers better understand their privacy and take steps to manage it. So it shows you the type of information a company is collecting, how it's used, and how they may be sharing your personal data, which enables them then to make an informed choice about how that data is used. And then easier to be able to unsubscribe or opt out. And again, as one of the guys mentioned there, none of this is possible without buy-in from the top. So having support and budget from the highest levels of the company is essential in being able to carry out any sort of cyber or privacy program. security controls aren't cheap. They require dedicated funding and resourcing. So having acknowledgement to the importance of cybersecurity and the back end to implement these measures is key.
Thank you.
Rochelle covered a lot of it there very well, Chris, and I'll just add a couple of points to it. Rochelle mentioned a lot of technical measures and a lot of technical controls that I would say we have implemented as well, and we would use as measures and controls for us within our organization. But I think just something I pick up on there, and something for me that is key is really around that education and awareness. And I think to really get to the next level for an organization in terms of their privacy and security return on the investment that's made, as Rochelle said, it's not cheap. Having as many people across an organization to be aware and to be educated on the risks and the threats that are associated with everything related to data and cybersecurity is going to be vital both now and going forward into the future. So security by design and privacy by design are some very hot topics right now also, and protecting the security development processes and life cycle. But really for me, it's about trying to put security and privacy at the heart and the forefront of what everybody does in their day-to-day job. So as many people across an organization that can be advocates for good practices when it comes to privacy and security, for me, it will be the key in the future to success beyond the technical measures and technical controls that we typically look to our technical teams to have responsibility for.
Fantastic. Right.
Yeah, and I agree with both the comments made. I think to go a little deeper in the technical realm, I think that the interesting thing that is probably still not so much a gap but a progressing space in terms of both education and just control is the adoption of new technologies. The adoption of new technologies is a growing challenge for most organizations, where we have to double down on the education, double down on understanding how to put the mitigating measures and controls in place. The best example of this is the adaptability and flexibility of cloud and virtualization. It's so easy to move services, move data, and move processes from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and as a consequence, breach compliance. And there's a lot that can be understood, both from an education point of view and just mitigating control point of view, to put measures in place at inception of adopting new technologies, adapting technologies such as cloud. Initially, you can restrict which regions or areas are used by the business in cloud, and that in itself can be a first measure at limiting and mitigating any, we'll say, lack of compliance or misuse of a new technology before both the business and the developers and the technical team are aware of its strengths and weaknesses and its adaptability. Some of which out of the box may automatically occur without the business realizing, or without the tech team really understanding what's going on. So again, those scenarios there, with a lot of the new technologies, there's a lot being provided under the hood, value-added services that are to help you with disaster recovery or help you with scalability. But in turn, some of those new value-added services can result in compliance problems, and I think that's the other end of the spectrum, which is that's where we need to probably double down is new technology adoption. All these education and mitigating controls and all these practices that are in play are all probably being done well in the traditional space, but in the technology adoption space, again, there's a lot of companies in the research side will be quick to look into and adopt new technology and work with new technology. But the practices that are applied to the more established and more mature ends of our business are less so applied to some of these more research-oriented ends of the business. And again, they should be applied with equal measure there. So when we get into those and progress those up to production systems, that we're well versed with the security by design principles and secure coding principles that are needed to adhere to compliance.
Brilliant. Thanks, Johnny. And this next question maybe sort of touches on that slightly, but again, guys, but have you noticed any trends, or with regards to security, maybe in the last few years, but ultimately you feel are going to be really prominent in the future for the industry as a whole? Rochelle, sorry, go ahead.
Yep, I'll go ahead. So maybe like some of the trends that we're seeing, it's thinking more how we secure them as technologies are advancing. So like artificial intelligence, machine learning will continue to grow. The use of bots to interact with customers. So and although these digital assistants can improve the speed and accuracy of customer interactions and cut costs from call center perspective, there's still a question of around authenticating that the customer is really who they say they are on the other end of that chat. And then I suppose like 5G, big data and edge computing are going to be more and more important to the industry so that insurance products can be more flexible and tailored to individual needs. And there's a wealth of information that can be collected really quickly, whether it's from drones or IoT. So like data in your oven could be used to share claim information for a home fire. The speed of information could enable smart buildings to react to like a simple leak, enabling it to be addressed before the damage gets too bad. So there's so many opportunities from a business perspective that can benefit the insurance industry. But then from a privacy perspective, it's really about getting the balance about how much of your personal data from those IoT devices, wearables or car telematics, how much of that are you prepared to give up in order to get that convenience or get a tailored quote? So I think consumers need to be able to make an informed choice and understand what data is being collected, for what purpose, and then how it's being shared and disposed of.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And that's a great point, Chris, and that Rochelle made. And I think it all comes back for me, all of those new technologies and all of those new trends that we know are coming down the pipeline and in the future as it relates to insurance and driving and all of that. What it does is it creates more data. So it creates more information. It gives more sources and more ways of organizations collecting and storing and using data for the purposes of claims or underwriting or whatever it may be. And I think again the main point in that for me is that consumer awareness. So we've seen it in recent years, and we see more and more of it as days go on. The heightened level of awareness that the consumers now have on who they're giving their data to and what their data is being used for. Just this week there's a lot of articles. I think today is when Apple released the latest version of their iOS system, which requires apps to gather consent if they want to track your usage across services outside of their own app, which is a huge change. It's a huge step forward in from a consumer perspective in terms of having control of your own data and having control of what organizations can see and do with that. And we're going to continue to see that. We're going to continue to see more large-scale, high-profile data breaches. That's inevitable. There's a lot, on the social media platforms that has happened in recent times, and in the airline industry as well. And I'm sure either all of us in some shape or form have been either impacted as part of a data breach or know somebody who's been a victim of fraud, for example. And I think I was reading earlier this morning, again looking back on some old information, and the Verizon data breach report is something that I look forward to each year, and seeing the wealth of information that comes from that. And in 2017, there were almost 2,000 global reports of data breaches, and in 2020, that was almost 4,000. So it's double in 3 years, and that's no doubt down to both regulation that is requiring organizations to report and notify on data breaches. Also the heightened risk and the heightened attention that is now on cybersecurity and the exploitation of that for typically financial gain. But yeah, I think it's going to continue in what we've seen, and really, going back to what we talked about earlier, that trust component with organizations and consumers is going to be key to organizations being successful and being able to convince consumers that this technology and the data that we're gathering, will ultimately be in a benefit to them in one way or another.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, and to go back to a point, I guess, that Rochelle initially said, and I think John elaborated on, of all the trends, probably the most prolific one, and one that will have probably the most impact overall, especially in the insurance space, is IoT. Look at IoTs in our, it can be classed, it depends on everyone's definition, but it can be classed in our Fitbits, in our doorbells or Ring doorbells, in your carbon monoxide alarm, your Google alarms, your Nest alarms, and many other devices which tie into various aspects of insurance, whether it be health insurance, home insurance, and various aspects of just general security. But all of them, in the context of data privacy, all have some tie back to PII, personally identifiable information. So, from your doorbell, when you come and go from your property, to your Fitbit also tracking your location and where you potentially have been. The value of that data, not only to the individual but to people who want to abuse the data, in a fraudulent way. IoT's is generating such phenomenal amount of data that's going to have the biggest impact on the insurance space in terms of understanding how much of that is actually important and required and necessary to insurance space, how much of that individuals are willing and want to share, and how it's used, what purpose does it have in insurance, whether for looking at the sort of claim side of the business, the post sale, or whether it's to help with even the sale side of the business in terms of reducing cost and reducing terms for the individual. It has various purposes, and individuals may want to separate the understanding of what data they're sharing and why it's being shared. But not only that, the risk of the data that they're sharing in terms of fraudulent activity, or in terms of the risk to their own personal security on top of that. So there's so many consequences of IoT itself, regardless of all the other technology trends. That I think IoT will probably be the biggest impact certainly in the insurance space.
Fantastic.
Hey, Chris, if I can add to that as well, I think speaking as a consumer, I think it's fair to say we all want and need technology to continue and to have more of a disruptive effect and modernize what is traditionally a manual and sometimes inefficient industry in insurance. I know for me anyway, on a personal aspect, it's a necessary evil for most of us. We have to have insurance by law, not something we necessarily enjoy doing each year when our 12-month renewal comes around or whatever it may be. We don't enjoy reading through all of the documentation and the information that sometimes we don't understand. So I think it's very important as consumers, and we all want technology to help modernize and bring the industry forward. So it's critical and key that organizations who are investing in that, not only for their own sake but for the consumer's sake, do that with security and data privacy in mind, so that we do get that trust and we do get that confidence to adopt it and to buy into it, and ultimately, change the industry overall.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. And I think that leads again quite nicely just onto the final question, folks. In your opinion, what do you feel the sort of biggest area of improvement the insurtech industry needs to address today and going forward in regards to security?
I think, maybe not even just the insurance company, but across the board, there needs to be more consistency around the regulatory aspects. Many states in the US have their own individual regulations, and then you take in New York DFS, California Consumer Privacy Act, GDPR, and other ones across the globe. It can be difficult to navigate and keep up. And it's not even just difficult to keep up with the varying regional regulations. It's going to be difficult for the regulations to actually keep up with the pace of change of the new technologies. Insurance companies could find themselves facing large exposures to risk that they don't really understand. So I think we need to ensure that these new technologies are secure by design. And already Jonathan alluded to the IoT devices out there as it is today. They lack even the most basic cybersecurity provisions. So if we're going to use data from these devices to make business decisions, we need to make sure that there's privacy and safety built in. And then I think as 5G rolls out, cyber risk is going to ramp up as well, with challenges around sophisticated encryption, decentralized operations, or security monitoring, if they're not up to the required levels to be able to keep up. And then I think my biggest gap that I see is the pipeline of talent. It's estimated that 90% of jobs in the future will require digital skills. We need digi skills to be part of the curriculum for our young people, so that they're equipped with the skills they need to be able to innovate, develop, and support these new technologies. So, there's just so much growth in this area and career opportunities across so many industries. But I don't think we're doing enough right now to ensure that our young people are coming out of education equipped with the right skills to keep up with the demand and growth in this area.
Fantastic point. John, you're nodding away there.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Chris, I think Rochelle has covered pretty much everything that was coming to mind for me. Consistency on regulations was something that was coming to mind. We're in the same position where we're trying to work through the challenges in the US market in particular, where there are different data privacy and security requirements depending on which state that you operate in, and trying to do that across multiple states is difficult. It's not efficient. It comes with a heavy cost, and I think we need to try and have some sort of consistency in some shape or form with doing that, and we're looking at ways internally to create and adopt a single framework that we can apply across each of the regulatory jurisdictions that can cover them all and find some sort of commonality. But again, that's time intensive. That's a big investment on our part to try and do that. And when things change and how things change, we don't always get a lot of notice on, and it's not always the case that we can be prepared for that. So that definitely is a point for me. Rochelle mentioned the skills gap and the skills shortage. It's a huge issue. We all know about it. Chris, you'll see it on the recruitment side of things, and we all see it day to day, trying to get enough talent coming through the pipelines to meet the demands and the needs. We're obviously very fortunate in Northern Ireland here to have a pool of talent, and have been very successful in that pool, being part of large organizations who have chosen to come and invest here. But we're not seeing that become any less of a challenge. And as Rochelle said, we need to start thinking about how we can do that more in our younger generations at an earlier stage, and whether it's looking at adding technology more into the education curriculums, or even specifically around cybersecurity, I think is something we need to be focusing more on now. Yeah. We need to be getting ahead of it now, because it's not going away, and it's only becoming more and more of an issue as the days go on. So the one other point that I would add, Chris, is just again, is somewhat related to what Rochelle said around the speed at which technology is changing, and we've all seen that in the past 12, 14 months, as much as any time before, and that with the pandemic obviously is forcing organizations to change how they work and to adapt and be flexible in their model to support their employees and their customers, and that results in again technology change. That results in the need for different technologies that haven't existed before within an organization, or technology to be more flexible or more mature in order to support those working models. And quite often the data privacy and the cybersecurity side of things has to try and keep up with that and play catch up. So that's something that I think is going to continue, and I think is an opportunity for us to try and be better at and getting ahead of that from a security perspective, and being more involved in the early stages of business changes and operational changes in order to do that in the right way. So the security tooling market, and I think Johnny might talk about it in a second a little bit as well. I know in my view, it's hugely saturated right now. It's obviously an opportunity and a market that has grown rapidly over the last number of years, and that's presented a lot of opportunities for vendors and software companies to develop solutions that, for me, and this is just my opinion, they're quite often very segmented, quite often isolated, quite often are focused on one particular problem potentially, or one particular aspect of the solution, without quite having an holistic view, and I think that creates challenges and inefficiencies for us and our teams to try and bring all of that together and try and create that holistic view that we're not getting from the tools and the vendors that are out there right now. So I'm not sure what the solution for that is, but I think it's a challenge that I know most, if not all, organizations have now.
Okay. Yeah, I think John's been reading my mind. And on a lighthearted note, John, I hope the pandemic phrase is not alluding to the fact that we'll be having a lot of health insurance claims for our backs in the bad seats that we're sitting in. The whole tooling space, stepping away from my role in an Insurtech business and looking at it just from even the slant I was looking at from my PhD days. It's surprising that it hasn't changed much in probably the last decade or so. The cloud has been there in various guises for a decade and has evolved and grown, but the tooling aspect for auditing and complying from a data privacy point of view, and just auditing and complying for legislative point of view, full stop, has always been behind technology wise. So when you look at the capabilities we have today in technology to, and I alluded to this earlier, moving data from one jurisdiction to another, moving a service, an operating service from one jurisdiction to another very easily within not even a matter of minutes, not a matter of seconds sometimes nowadays. The ability for a company to accidentally fall out of compliance, and whether the company are even aware, it could be an act of a specific individual or team that's doing some standard sort of maintenance that they weren't really thinking about necessarily the data privacy. Maybe they didn't have the security education, or maybe they did and they just weren't aware that the service that they were maintaining or doing work on had any data of relevance in it, or was dealing with data. And the act that they take of moving that service from A to B, in which that changed the jurisdiction of where the data was residing or being processed, all of a sudden knocks the company out of compliance. And whether that data stays there or moves back to the jurisdiction, it's the fact for auditors, regulators, and the powers and tools and controls they have to even realize that took place. That's not there. In my opinion, and I think a lot of us see that. They have a lot of tools. There's a lot of capabilities, and companies, like High Roads and like Allstate and IOA are all doing their part in security by design, secure coding, applying different mitigating principles, techniques, and doing all they can. But the fact that the auditors and regulators don't have the tools to work out and find the companies that potentially don't have those mechanisms in place. And I think Rochelle alluded to it earlier in terms of the IoT devices that may not be meeting standard. There are IoT devices that don't, and there are IoT devices that do. And there's some great examples of using IoT, and folks who know me know I'm a big fan of Elon Musk and SpaceX and Tesla. We've seen some great examples of Tesla being used for car insurance claims and for even home insurance claims, where the cameras on the Tesla have detected intruders in the home or detected some form of damage to vehicles or attempted damage to vehicles. And there's a lot of mechanisms, there's a lot of security, and there's a lot of compliance apply in those instances. But there's a lot of devices again have not got the compliance and have backdoors into them to access the data, and as a supplier they're not meeting the grade that our companies potentially would expect them to, or would adhere to ourselves. So again, that's probably the biggest challenge, the biggest gap that this industry has as a whole, is trying to get that sort of consistency and conformance that we are all upheld to a certain standard equally, but also the fact that the regulators and the auditors that are upholding those standards have the tooling and technology and the ability to keep up the pace with the technology that we're being provided to define our services with, so much so that there's ability to call our companies out or call other companies out when they do make mistakes, and hopefully we're in the good side of that equation.
Yes, fantastic, brilliant. Okay, well, guys, we'll wrap up there. First of all, I would like to thank each one of you for your insights and taking the time to join us today, and thanks to everyone who's came along today to observe. So thank you, folks.
Thanks very much, Chris.